The movie begins in Canada, where Constable Jake Dundas confronts Olive Cunningham, who has tied herself to a peach tree. He reminds her that she's not included in the will of the orchard's owner, May, so her protest won't make any difference. Olive insists she's not after the property but wants to protect it from developers. When Dundas dismisses her concerns, Olive dares him to arrest her, warning that her supporters will film it, damaging his reputation. At her signal, her friends appear. Trixie taunts Dundas, and Stilts starts filming him up close. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, talent agent Max Roth receives news that he's inherited the peach orchard from his Aunt May. The following day, he consults his father, Clive, a lawyer, who advises him to discuss it with his mother, May's sister, for more insight. When Max visits his mother, Val, she confesses she doesn't know why he was left the orchard as she wasn't close to May. She mentions, though, that Max loved visiting his aunt's orchard as a child. Still, Max feels no real connection and decides to sell the property. Val respects his choice. At the orchard, realtor Don Cherry is prematurely showing the property to a potential buyer. To disrupt his pitch, Trixie grabs his phone and races toward Olive, who's still tied to the tree. As Don catches up, Trixie throws the phone to Stilts, who returns it only after the potential buyers leave in frustration. Annoyed, Don demands the house keys from Olive, but she refuses, reminding him that May didn't want her orchard sold to developers. Don ignores her protests. In his office, Max prepares to leave and assigns his colleague Ryan to cover his tasks. Returning home, Max's girlfriend, Lena, tries to get close to him, but he brushes her off, blaming her for adding to his stress. Hurt, Lena finally backs down and Max promises her he'll be back in less than a week. The next day, Don complains to Constable Dundas about Olive's interference, asking why she hasn't been arrested. Dundas explains that they need the new owner's consent. Suspicious, he questions why Don is showing an unsold property, to which Don gives a vague response, though Dundas suspects he's trespassing. Arriving at the orchard, Max struggles with poor cell reception and catches a glimpse of Trixie hiding among the trees. When he follows her, he stumbles upon Olive still strapped to the peach tree. Bemused, Max asks if this is a local custom, and Olive plays along to make him uncomfortable. She then directs him to use his eyes to find May's house, which is right across the orchard. As he heads toward it, Olive mentions that Sugar isn't May's real name. Max responds that he knows and clarifies that he's her nephew. Olive asks if he plans to keep the house, but he shrugs it off. Inside May's house, Max is greeted by a collection of bizarre items, piquing his curiosity. As Max continues exploring his aunt's home, he's struck by the room's character, filled with antique furnishings that give it a unique charm. Suddenly, he gets a call from his father, Clive. Max mentions meeting Olive in the orchard, which doesn't surprise Clive. In fact, that's the reason for his call. He warns Max that Olive is a dedicated protester challenging May's will. Sensing Max's confusion, Clive explains that British Columbia has laws that allow wills to be contested. After their conversation, Max heads outside to offer Olive some water, though she can't drink it in her current position. He confronts her about disputing the will, suggesting they talk it over, but she deflects, asking if he knows how May passed. Max responds that she died of heart failure, but Olive hints it was more complex, suggesting he doesn't know his aunt well. The next day, Constable Dundas visits Max, offering help in dealing with Olive. Max agrees and invites him inside. Curious, Max asks if they'll arrest her, but Dundas explains that Olive has an older brother who typically deals with her antics. Their conversation is interrupted when Don arrives, eager to discuss selling the property. Dundas, however, notices Olive is missing and suggests she may have gone to her brother's place. Checking the house to be sure, Dundas finds no sign of her, leaving his card in case Max needs help. After Dundas leaves, Max hears a noise from the pantry and discovers Olive inside, happily helping herself to food. She asks if he'll turn her in, but he reassures her that his phone reception is terrible. Just then, his phone buzzes as Ryan tries to reach him. Frustrated by the weak signal, Max steps outside to return the call, only to learn Ryan's struggling with a client. Frustrated by the poor reception, Max heads back inside, where Olive's presence lifts his spirits. Olive serves Max breakfast and questions him about May. He admits to only vague memories like May's distinct laugh and habit of chuckling at her own jokes, which amuses Olive. As she serves him coffee, he takes the chance to ask how she's connected to May. Olive reveals she's not related, but is merely stalling to devise a plan to prevent development on May's land. When Max asks what that plan might be, Olive teases that she'll seduce him. Max laughs it off, confident he won't be swayed. Later, while heading to a local cafe, Max gets a call from his girlfriend Lena, who's worried about his lack of contact. He explains the poor signal but tries to end the call quickly. Unwilling to let him go just yet, Lena asks when he'll return, but Max dodges the question and insists he's busy. Before hanging up, Lena requests he bring something back for her from Canada. Moments after the call ends, Clive contacts Max, informing him of an agricultural issue. The land protected by the Agricultural Land Reserve must remain agricultural, complicating any plans for development. However, Clive assures Max he'll enlist a lawyer to work on removing this restriction. Later, Max visits a shop to pick up a gift for Lena. He notices goats on the roof and, bewildered, asks the clerk, Seth, about them. Seth pretends to be concerned about Max's sanity, calling in Dr. Bark, who runs through some health questions. When Max mentions his stress, Seth recommends a remedy. After picking up the goods, Max heads to a nearby farm where he finds Olive trying to wrangle a pig. He lends a hand and she thanks him, revealing the farm belongs to her brother now that she's brought him up. Olive takes Max to her brother Andy's horse ranch, where Andy warmly welcomes him. Unable to contain his curiosity, Max asks how the goats managed to get on the roof. Andy offers to show him, and Max enjoys watching and interacting with the goats, entirely missing several calls from Ryan, who's dealing with mounting issues back in Los Angeles due to Max's absence. Frustrated, Ryan leaves a voicemail urging Max to get in touch. After bonding with the animals, Max and Andy get along easily, with Andy sharing that he once hurt himself during a rodeo competition. That night, Max joins the locals in honoring Aunt May by scattering her ashes over a bonfire, followed by a celebration. However, as he begins to drink too much, Max leaves the festivities early and returns to the house. At home, he finds Olive relaxing in the living room. She offers him a drink, and they sit together in a comfortable silence. Still puzzled by his unexpected inheritance, Max asks Olive about her relationship with May. Olive shares that May took in both her and Andy when they had nowhere to go. She also helped Andy manage his animal rescue farm. When Max inquires about May's work, Olive hints that May gave people pleasure. Surprised, Max asks if the house was once a brothel, and Olive confirms it, although she sidesteps further details by announcing she needs a bath. She boldly invites Max to join her. Torn between reason and attraction, he eventually gives in, but when he rushes things, Olive stops him, pointing out that he's treating it like a task to be checked off. Offended, Max sulks, refusing her invitation to dance. Yet with Olive's persistence, he eventually relents. As they sway together, Max stumbles, pulling Olive down with him onto the cushions, and they find themselves giving in to their connection. The next morning of the court hearing, Olive lacks legal representation. Judge Lerman questions her claim that she's May's daughter, noting she'll need to prove a family connection to advance her case. Max's lawyer, Peter Cosi, submits an affidavit from Don stating that no evidence links Olive to May, which leads the court to reject Olive's application. Afterward, Peter asks Max to sign a document for removing the orchard from agricultural protection. Overhearing, Olive confronts Max, furious that he plans to remove May's land from the Agricultural Land Reserve. Max insists he's only there to sell the property and return to his life in Los Angeles. Their argument draws Don's attention and he attempts to intervene, scolding Olive for her lack of decorum. When she fires back with insults, Don tells her that everyone is tired of her antics. Feeling deeply betrayed by Max and hurt by Don's words, Olive loses control, angrily trashing the gymnasium. Some locals try to intervene, but Andy steps in, asking everyone to give his sister the space she needs. Max dismisses Andy's advice to listen, prompting Andy to scold him. Reflecting on his recent encounter with Olive, Max starts rethinking his life, sparking a desire to write again. While packing up some of May's beloved possessions, he finds an old photo album, which stirs up memories of his childhood. A few days later, Max brings a basket of May's items to Andy's farm, inquiring about Olive, but Andy suggests he check on her himself. Hesitant, Max quickly says goodbye. Back in Los Angeles, Max returns to his hectic routine, but it feels empty. When he arrives home, his girlfriend Lena eagerly greets him, craving his attention. Max brushes her off, saying he's busy, and when he doesn't reciprocate her affection, Lena decides to end the relationship. Max agrees without protest. The following day, Max gets a call from Don, who asks if he's ready to sell the orchard. Max tells him he needs more time to decide. After some thought, he announces to his colleagues that he's quitting. That day, Max drives to the Canadian border, only to be stopped for a vehicle search. A guard finds illegal paraphernalia, which Max denies owning. Clive reprimands him, but Max soon realizes it likely belongs to Lena, who had borrowed his car. When Clive urges him to sell the orchard and return to his old life, Max declines, stating he wants to live life, not just chase it. Later, Max decides to call Don and authorize him to sell the property. Constable Dundas informs Andy of the sale, and Olive, noticing the somber mood, learns the news. Disheartened, Olive insists they harvest the peaches before the trees are cut down. She calls Max to confront him, and he explains that complications at the border forced him to sell. Optimistic, he tells her Don said they would turn the orchard into a bed and breakfast. Furious, Olive reveals the real plan is to replace it with condominiums, leaving Max regretful, as this would betray May's wishes. By fall, while driving alone, Max notices a vineyard for sale sign and initially speeds past, convincing himself it's not for him. But on a whim, he turns back to take a look. A man named Fur welcomes him and shows him around the vineyard, where Max is amused to see a bear wandering nearby. Despite its rustic quirks, Max finds himself captivated by the vineyard's beauty. Subscribe to watch more content, turn on notifications, and like the video to support the channel. Thanks for watching.